Thank you very much, very generous. You just heard a coherent presentation. I will now follow with an incoherent one. Okay, so bear with me there. I want to talk to you about beauty, aesthetics, and usability today. And I want to know, well, I know kind of now, but I want to let you know what does one have to do with the other. Now, the problem that I really had was that I came back from a holiday, had 3 weeks' time, had to research like a crazy person, and I only really finished that presentation about 3/4 of an hour ago, so bear with me, okay? All right. So first of all, why am I in front of you today? So first of all, I volunteer regularly for IxDA talks, and so should you, but most of you don't. And why is that, I wonder? I don't know. Anyway, change it. I don't give a shit. All right? Second, as Lisa has already said, I really don't like arguments based on opinion. I love arguments, don't get me wrong, but opinions just suck, you know, because who gives a shit? What really counts is facts, and unfortunately facts are few and far between in UX, and that's why I always go to the source. And I go to the source for you because I know no one else does, okay? So I read all of this shit for you guys tonight, and I will summarize it as well as I can. I have a second version of this talk, which is text only, and it's huge, and I will upload that as well. So if you actually want to have some more detail, and I don't think you will after tonight, but if you do, I will also upload that to my SlideShare account. So what I usually do is I just pick a random topic. You know, I just say, why don't I research dartboards? And then I go in and I see, okay, what has been written about dartboards? And then I go into the bibliographies and I find my way back in history. And at some point I get to like 1746, I don't know, like some tribe somewhere in the Amazon jungle or whatever, I don't know. And then I build it back up from there, hoping that a narrative will evolve out of that. And I totally failed with that tonight, okay? So we'll see where we end up. All right, so why do I want to talk about this topic tonight? We in Atlassian have a whole bunch of smaller design teams within the company. And what we have is usually that a team has a bunch of strong UX researchers and not so many visual designers, or it has a lot of visual designers but not so many UX researchers. And what you then get out of that is that a UX research heavy team would come up with a design that kind of is missing and lacking that edge, that visual design edge that makes it beautiful. But at the same time, the visual design teams come up with stuff that looks absolutely stunning, but at the same time is not quite there with usability. And both of those teams criticize the hell out of each other, okay? And so at that point you will have to go and say, well, what is actually more important? If everything was the same, what would I go for? Would I go for more usability, or would I go for better looks? All right? And that's what I wanted to find out. And that's why, unfortunately, I picked this topic. All right, so tonight is about this. So, I'm German, therefore my ideal beauty is here on the right, Heidi Klum. On the left we have Jakob Nielsen, for different reasons than beauty. But he's certainly the one guy who stands for usability the most, okay? I don't know where I got these pictures from. Okay, so what you will learn today, I will force you through a timeline of this history, okay? You will not enjoy it. But neither did I. Okay, I will bend a little bit, a tiny bit, and I think Martin Tomic is not here today, is that right? Good, because he's the only lecturer who comes here quite often, and he probably won't like what I'm saying. I also want to give you a couple of tools maybe, and you won't even notice that I gave them to you, that define and measure website aesthetics. I want to tell you what we really know today, or more likely what we really have no clue about. And I want you to learn how to spell aesthetics, which I found extremely difficult. Okay, this is this pile, all right? And I read a whole bunch of abstracts, but I thought it would be unfair if I claimed to have also read them. I read all of those. Most of them are terrible, okay? Terribly written, badly done. There may be like 6 or 7 heavyweight pieces in here, right? I have, in the end, given in and will only talk about those, although I would love to talk about everything just to make you guys feel the pain. All right. As I said, you know, I'm summarizing it. Okay. So let's start with a quick win. Academic papers. Who here has read an academic paper over the last month? It's not bad. It's not bad. I'm sure that half of you are lying, but you look smart. Ready, set. Okay. So, the problem is with these kind of new areas that the first study is terrible. Okay? People make unsubstantiated claims, their statistics are horrendous. But the cool thing is, they just come up with something new. And then what happens is that some researchers go, oh, this is interesting. I might make a name out of myself if I go into this. And then, as they sink their teeth in firmly and create one study after another and research, they build up an ego. And when they build up an ego, they become defensive. And then the turf wars really start between researchers. It is highly entertaining at that point. So the problem then is that everybody wants to make it simple. But often, it's just not simple. That doesn't deter them at all. They still claim it's simple. They just kind of stuff up the statistics, and you kind of have to kind of look through that when you read through this. The other problem is that everybody wants to have the best headline. All right? And that is because they want to be picked up by newspapers, they want to be tweeted around, or whatever meaningless thing people can do with that stuff. Luckily, someone at some point will turn around and say, screw all of this. I will do this properly and I will prove you all wrong. And luckily tonight I have a couple of those as well. And the last thing is that most of the people who write scientific papers are people working for universities. And they're using convenience samples, which is the really nice and well-paid term for anybody who crosses my path, which is usually my students. So when it comes to unbiased samples, you will not find them anywhere. They're all like social psychology students, designer students. All of them kind of know what they want to achieve when they test, and therefore it's quite biased. Anyway, we still treat it as truth, okay? Let's start with this. Was it a creative pause? All right. So let's just quickly talk about beauty as a research concept. This guy is Socrates, all right? So he basically came up with this whole philosophical approach about objective perception, okay? If something fulfills its function, it's inherently beautiful. He didn't say that, but I've paraphrased for him, okay? So what he wanted to say with that was that it's kind of this form follows function thing, right? So if something does what it's supposed to do, it is by definition beautiful, which is pretty boring, so let's just forget about that. This guy, for the video, I have to apologize now, I will pronounce his name the German way as he deserves. His name is Immanuel Kant. But you spell it K-A-N-T, so don't yeah, thank you. So he claims beauty is within the subject, not the object. Okay, and that is the philosophical approach with the subjective perception. So what he basically says is that when it comes to beauty, it is about you interpreting what you see. It's not about the object itself. Okay, that's more interesting. But of course, we are after the empirical stuff. There's the experimental approach, where basically you look at an object and you go, ah, okay, this is a property that I deem as beautiful, and there's another one, and there's another one, and then I tie them all up and count it up, and then you get like 3 items of beauty, therefore it's 3 beauties. Yeah, mathematically probably not, it doesn't stand the test of time, that one. Once again, not too interesting, this is what we're going for tonight. Beauty as a subjective stimulus of a complete item. So what this does is, it says, we as people react to a stimulus in a subjective manner. Okay? It's entirely up to you how we react to that. And we're also taking the whole item. We're not just looking at one aspect of it, we're reacting to the same item no matter whether we want to or not. And that is what we talk about today. Exhaustive science fact number 1. Okay. Where it all began. Let's travel back to 1972, 5 years before I was born. And still look like 25. What is beautiful is good was the number, I think the number 1 in terms of time that I could find really. Done by Dion, Berscheid and Wolster, I don't know, in 1972. What they did was, they chose 50 stimulus objects, which are people, on pieces, printed out, and rated them as unattractive, moderately attractive, and attractive. And you have to become comfortable with that because we do that all the time tonight. Okay, so there's nothing mean here. And then they showed these pictures to 60 participants, and these participants had to rate each one of those photos on various character traits. Has anybody here heard of this study? Excellent. Good. The outcome was that when people had to assign character traits to the attractive crowd, they had more socially desirable traits. They were good in interpersonal skills, as they say. They were expected to get better jobs. They had happier marriages, at least people claimed that. And for some reason, they weren't supposed to be better parents. Don't know. Now, that's called the halo effect, and I'm sure that some of you have heard of that. So I'll just read out the definition. The cognitive bias where one particular trait, especially good characteristics, influences or extends to other qualities of the person. The interesting thing here is that usually when I look at a person that I've never seen before, the first thing that I notice is the way they look. Are they not attractive, moderately attractive, or very attractive? That's how I just look at you and I do that. Spontaneously, right? With every one of you, so not sparing anyone. But the cool thing is that's because it's the first thing and I immediately need to react to that person. That then colors my whole perception of that person from then on. And that is the halo effect. So if someone is good looking, I immediately assume, well, then the other stuff is also good. Okay? And that's just something that no one can fight. We all do it. So be comfortable with it. Okay. Now that is entirely not interesting for us as designers, right? So let's get to the stuff where it actually gets interesting. In 1995, two Japanese guys, Kurozu and Kashimura, wrote a paper called Apparent Usability versus Inherent Usability. Now, apparent usability is when you look at something and say, I think this is usable. That's the apparent usability. Inherent usability is when you use that thing and then afterwards you say, oh, it was shit. All right? So, the study that they did was, they created 26 different ATM layouts. Basically, according to quadrants, they could be either high or low usability, or high or low aesthetics. And then they had 26 of those, and put them in front of people. Now, 252 students were asked, how beautiful are they, each one of those layouts, and how easy are they to use? And what they found was that there was a high correlation between apparent usability and apparent beauty. So people usually said, if something looked usable, it was also beautiful. Or they said, oh, it looked beautiful, therefore it was also usable. Okay? High correlation on that. And the funny thing was, and this might make no sense, but I say it anyway. The funny thing was, this was actually stronger than what experts had predicted when they said this is usable or this is beautiful. So people even perceived it in a stronger manner. So these two guys basically said there's a strong correlation here. Beauty influences apparent usability more than actual usability does. That's what they claimed. Totally unsubstantiated. But as I said before, that was the first paper, so they could do whatever the hell they wanted. Alright, so 1-0 for Heidi Klum. I like that score. I hope she sees this. Maybe she downloads it even. Maybe she favorites it even. So, interesting stuff, right? I'm not sure if you guys find this really interesting. I found it interesting. So, then there came this one guy who said, no one gave a shit about this study, but I will make them care. And that was Naum Traktinsky, an Israeli researcher in 1997. And he wrote this paper with the rather arduous title, Aesthetics and Apparent Usability, Empirically Assessing Cultural and Methodological Issues. Don't worry about the cultural and methodological stuff, yeah? That, no one cared about that later. But he came out, kicked the door in and said, Jacob Nielsen and Don Norman, you guys are totally wrong with your emphasis on usability. And in 1997, that was kind of a big deal. That's basically going up to Barack Obama and slapping him in the face. Yeah? So, he did it anyway, didn't care. And he basically said, maybe this focus on usability studies is distracting us from what really makes a difference for user acceptance. And that, if he could prove that, that would be a revolutionary moment. So his study simply took the Japanese ATM layouts, translated them into the Hebrew context, I guess you say, and we had to replace a couple of things there, then ran them. And the overall result of that was that aesthetics, yes, strongly affect perceived usability. 2-0. So, he then thought, this is my chance to become famous. This is where the ego arises, okay? So he did another study. He actually did quite a few, but I'm only picking up 3. What is beautiful is usable. And as you can see, he's playing on words there, because it was before, what is beautiful is good. Then he goes, what is beautiful is usable, and people go, oh, this is so clever, and he's funny. Let's read this thing. All right. So his claim was, usability and aesthetics influence each other due to the popular stereotyping, i.e. just kind of say who you are, the halo effect, if something looks good, probably the rest is good as well, and the effective immediate response, which basically means I just have to look at you quickly and already I form my opinion. His questions were, is there anything else influencing, being influenced apart from usability, and what happens after we actually really test it and not just look at it? So, the study he devised took a subset of the ATM layouts he had before and assessed them on 3 different scales. Then the participants rated, then tested, and then rated again. That used to be 5 slides, just 1 sentence. And the result was that real usability performance was not influenced by aesthetics. So it basically means no matter what it looked like, people performed in the same way. But post-use satisfaction was entirely based on post-use perceived usability and post-use perceived aesthetics. Which basically means that real usability performance didn't influence post-use assessment in any way. Only aesthetics did. Boom. Alright, that would basically mean, there you go, usability, get out of here. Alright? Makes no difference. All we have to do is visual design mumbo jumbo, and we sell that thing. And people don't care. Even if they try to use it and they can't, they don't care. Obviously bullshit, and I'm coming to that later. But at that point in time, that was cutting edge science. Alright, 3-0. Pretty bad for Jacob there. Alright, and then his last big birth that he gave to a scientific paper was assessing dimensions of perceived visual aesthetics of websites. And I'm putting that in there because he actually came up with a couple of scales that you can use for testing aesthetics, and they're actually quite good. Although the guy himself, So, the study was a 5-part study series. That was big, that took a long time and probably was even costly. He generated a whole bunch of reliable scales and tested them by applying them and number crunching the outcome. There's like ANOVA, 2-factor, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what these things mean either, so I don't even pretend. So he wanted to also learn kind of what direction the causality of the link went. So the results about metrics were that he came up with 2 pretty handy groups of how to measure aesthetics and beauty in a product. One was the classical aesthetics, and you know all of those terms, you know kind of where they come from. Aesthetic, pleasant, clean, clear, symmetrical. This is what Socrates was teaching. And on the other side we have expressive stuff, where visual designers can be creative and wow people and that kind of thing. Okay? You can now turn this, and this is my first gift to you tonight, you can turn this into questionnaires. You can also download them if you want, or you can be creative. You can, for example, make them into statements and say, I find the website I'm currently looking at pleasant, 1 to 7. And then you can use that as a questionnaire and then analyze whatever you design today. Alright, what about results about this causality link between beauty and usability? He found that perceived usability is correlated to classical aesthetics, but not so much to expressive aesthetics. So it's not necessarily about the wow factor that makes you think that usability is good or bad. It's about how clean and clear and symmetrical it is. Clear design is part of both classical aesthetics and the general understanding of usability. Now this is where it gets tricky. This in turn shows that users struggle to clearly distinguish between the 2 concepts. And that's why it often happens that a person thinks if something is usable, it's also beautiful, and if something's beautiful, it's also usable. Because in their heads, they don't understand the difference, but they believe they do. Okay, it's just a normal thing. Alright. So, this is now the point where people were starting to get sick of that guy. And someone said, time to disagree, and time to maybe do this a little bit differently. That's when a guy called Mark Hassenzahl in 2004 wrote the paper, The Interplay of Beauty, Goodness and Usability on Interactive Products. Are you guys still with me?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Right, good. Thank you. Thank you. I'm not just talking to you. Alright, cool. So, first of all, he came up with a product model in a 2002 study. He didn't want to go into details here. His product model was that, first of all, any product has product attributes like features, general amount of beauty, goodness, likability, that kind of thing. And at the same time, it has a product character. And that is divided into pragmatic qualities, which we all know and care about, usability, utility, that kind of thing, and hedonic qualities, a word that I had not heard before. Hedonic qualities exists for stimulation for identification. So hedonic qualities in the stimulation bracket are all about being challenged and having fun with something. Why hedonic qualities in the identification brackets are that you feel something is nice, beautiful, whatever, because you can identify yourself with it and represent yourself with it to others. Make sense? So you heighten your own self in front of others. It's a very base feeling, but we all have it. So why be embarrassed about it? Cool. This guy was a very wily businessman. That's why he questionarialized this, which is a word I own the trademark to. And he came up with a questionnaire that's called attractive. See what he did there? Ooh, so clever. All right, so that's, as you can see, quite a big questionnaire, but I have to say, one of the better ones. So once again, look it up. You can use it for free, but if you want to have access to this database where you can make comparisons, then you have to pay. Yeah, so just ask the company or whatever. I don't know. Good. The study that he had was that he took, instead of ATM layouts or something, he took MP3 skins. I didn't even know what that was. I never was in the music crowd. He had two very ugly ones and two very beautiful ones. And his first study just had participants look at them and then fill out the attractive 2 questionnaire. In the second study, they looked at those MP3 skins, then assessed them, then used them, and then assessed them again. So you could have a bit of a longitudinal study thing. These are the MP3 skins. I don't know. There's one beautiful here. No. So, the overall results he came up with here, that the pragmatic qualities predict goodness, but they don't predict beauty. That's interesting. So pragmatic qualities, remember, there was utility and usability, okay? They predict goodness. So a product is good, but it doesn't mean that it's beautiful, right? Wisdom, boom, right? Mind blown. HQI, hedonic qualities identification, predicts beauty. So this whole clean, clear, wait, is that the thing? Yes. The stuff that you basically need to reflect your own self, that is what you find beautiful, right? And beauty is not strongly affected by using the product. Okay, so it actually doesn't matter whether you've used it or not, just look at it. Your assessment of beauty is the same. So, I was getting a little confused here. Stratinsky had just proven that beauty influenced usability. And Hassensahl had just proven that beauty and usability were completely independent. Yeah, that happens a lot when you read scientific news, articles. So what had happened? Hassensahl claimed that Stratinsky actually didn't succeed in just manipulating usability. Okay? While Stratinsky didn't say anything really. He wrote his paper beforehand, so he couldn't really come back to him. Anyway, Jacob, finally, 1 point. Alright, now there's an interlude. I'm not sure if you guys care. I just really quickly summarize it. It takes exactly, well not exactly, but it takes 50 milliseconds for people to have an opinion on beauty or aesthetics. You can see all of this by reading this paper, or by reading my notes, and it's all here. Okay? But that's all I wanted to say to it, really. Saved ourselves another 5 minutes. Interesting interlude over. Okay. You guys look tired, and so am I. So let's wrap this up. But we're wrapping it up with a big one. We're wrapping it up with a study, the likes of which I have never seen before, because it was massive. So, that was a study called, Is Beautiful Really Usable? Toward Understanding the Relation Between Usability, Aesthetics and Effect in HCI by a guy called Tuch and a whole bunch of other people in 2012, so not that long ago. He had a whole bunch of problems with studies about usability and aesthetics before he took it on. First of all, researchers always assumed that they already knew the direction of the causality. And when you do a two-factor analysis, that is problematic, as most of you don't know. Trust me. The problem was also that when people claimed that they were manipulating only one condition, for example, beauty, they actually didn't succeed, because by manipulating beauty, they often also manipulated usability. And that then inherently nullifies the outcome. Also, every single one of those researchers either came up with a different scale or like just, I don't know, made it up on the fly, I don't know. Anyway, it was very difficult to obviously compare apples and oranges. And as I said before, researchers always look for dumb causalities. But actually what they should have looked for is what is called a boundary condition. How many people here know what a boundary condition is? Good nodding though. I like it. Okay, with boundary conditions, we describe the possibility that different degrees of usability and aesthetics manipulation may affect the aesthetics-usability relationship differently. That's a fancy way of saying it depends. Okay? So what this basically says is that it could, for example, be that if I do a tiny tweak on aesthetics, it might have a completely different outcome on usability than if I changed the whole thing. Okay? And that is a real problem because researchers don't want to admit that. It's not a good headline. You can't say, we found out, it depends, that, and then blah, 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 blah. It doesn't even fit into a Twitter message. Yeah, sorry, a tweet. Alright, this was his study, okay? It is massive. Basically, he took screenshots of an online shop, then showed that to people for 10 seconds, made them jump through a whole bunch of hoops in terms of questionnaires. That was the pre-use evaluation. Then he let them use it. Every time they used something, they had to evaluate it again and again and again for a whole bunch of tasks. And then afterwards, they had to fill out a whole bunch of questionnaires again. And the fastest ones, I don't think including the questionnaires themselves, would get iPods. Okay? So, what made the study different? First of all, I think what he really achieved was that he actually really only manipulated usability without touching aesthetics. And he did that by leaving the aesthetics completely the same and only changing the information architecture. You can do that, and it actually does make sense. And the same he did to the aesthetics, where he really only changed the colors, some of the visual elements like imagery, but nothing about the usability at all. He left it exactly the same. So this was like a real autonomous change of scales. And this is, for example, one of those. So on the left side here, you see the original online shop. And on the right side, someone really screwed with the colors. That would be when I get let loose. Yeah. So that's... okay, now, he used 7 questionnaires, system usability score, attractive to, ASQ, WOOS, SAM, and 3 other ones. And every participant had to fill out 54 measuring scales. It's good effort. So, the most exhausting and exhaustive study of all time. What does it reveal? I couldn't animate this, so I'll just go to the next slide, okay? Still new to Max, okay, so the first bunch of results was about aesthetics potentially, or maybe not, influencing usability. Let's see what he found. Aesthetics did not influence perceived usability before use. There was no halo effect. Oh, we just learned the whole thing. So, aesthetics did also not influence perceived usability after use. No, what is beautiful is usable effect. Perceived usability was only affected by the actual experienced usability. Whew. Wow, yeah, saved our ass. Yeah. Experienced usability did influence perceived aesthetics after use, particularly this HQI, so hedonic qualities identification, and classical aesthetics. So it's rather, what is usable is beautiful. That's good stuff. Experienced usability did not impact HQS or expressive aesthetics after use. Okay, so that means that there are aspects to beauty that have actually nothing to do with the usability, but they are not the ones that matter. Right, and then the last thing was that he did a pre- and post-test comparison to see how it holds up over time. And basically the pre- and post-perceived usability ratings are not related, and that's a good thing. It means that a person can look at something and say, wow, this is awesome, and then they test it and they go, holy shit, that's bad. Yeah, and it works. So that's good stuff. And usability only affects aesthetics after use. So that is what I call the frustration effect. It's not a real thing. But basically it says that if usability goes really badly, people will not like the aesthetics of this product very much. So there is a little bit of cross fertilization. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I thought this is where the story ended. And for you guys tonight it will. However, I will leave you with no answers. Because the change in the usability condition was strong, yet the change in the aesthetics condition was weak. And that means that once again, his sample is kind of tainted by that. All right? At the same time, it became apparent that it's also a little bit about how you phrase the tasks that people have to do. If you have a goal, so what if goal-directed pressure tasks put emphasis on usability? So if I say to you, as fast as you can, find the following item, go. People will go, whoa, usability is really important. But if I tell them in an open, relaxed way, hey, you know what, just kind of check it out, you know, let's see what you can find. Then they will go, well, actually, you know, this thing is really good looking and I don't give a shit about usability. Kind of logical. Right, so, we're kind of at 3-2, but really, we're kind of, I have no idea. So, let's wrap this up. In cognitive psychology, boundary conditions for phenomena are more likely than simple causalities. As painful as it is for you, if you quote this line, people will pay you more money because they think you're smart. Right? And it's true. And it's true. When you phrase your usability tasks and then you go, oh, 18% said this, please be aware that you are always putting in a task bias. Okay? Goal-oriented tasks make people pay more attention to usability, and open tasks will make people pay more attention to aesthetics. So just be aware of it, okay? And then inform the people you work for that this is the case. And the usability influences overall perception of the product, but so does the effective response to good or bad aesthetics. So you should still pay attention to both. Because although it might be that in your tests usability is more important, people still react to a design immediately. And you have to pay attention to that, especially if you work in a consumer setting and people make their purchase decision based on that first reaction. And some things in general, when you're testing usability, you probably also test aesthetics. Just get comfortable with that and be honest about it. When you ask about aesthetics, you probably also get answers about usability. And once again, try to detect that. All right? When you ask about the overall experience, you get a mix of both, and people will not be able to distinguish properly, no matter how good your questions are. Okay? So be careful what you ask them. And that's all I have for you tonight. Thank you.